It's late. The kind of late where the forest, outside, forgets its voice. I've been sitting here for hours, the fire whispering low, the smell of pine smoke and oil-soaked leather clinging to everything. My father's hunting gear rests beside me on the table, his old Winchester, his field knife, the compass with the cracked glass. I used to think those things made him look like a hero. Now they just look like relics from a war no one ever admitted happened. I never believed in the stories he told. Not really. When I was a kid, I thought Cryptid Hunter was just his way of hiding from life, an excuse for why he came home bruised, why he'd sit in the dark staring at maps with red marks drawn through wilderness, zones no one ever went near. He'd say, "There are things out there that don't fit." I'd laugh, call them campfire stories. He'd just nod and pour another cup of black coffee, his eyes fixed on the window like he was watching something move behind the trees. After he died, they said it was a hunting accident. They said he went north, slipped on ice, maybe a bear got him. But no one ever found the body. The ranger's report said the camp was empty, tent torn, blood in the snow, no prints leading out. My mother burned what was left of his notes, said the man was gone, and the madness with him. But she didn't know about the trunk. It was hidden under the cabin floorboards, sealed in plastic, rust around the hinges. I found it 3 nights ago. Inside were his journals, 7 of them, bound in black leather, each marked with dates running back 30 years. I told myself I'd read one, just to understand the man I never really knew. I made coffee, stoked the fire, and opened the first page. The handwriting hit me first. Sharp, deliberate, the same way he'd carve his initials into his tools. The early entries read like any hunter's log: weather conditions, terrain, ammunition count. But then came something else. Heard movement at 0300 hours. One line read, "Too heavy for deer. Too smart for bear." Then, saw the eyes again, low to the ground this time. Same glow amber gold. My breath fogged in the cold cabin air. I turned the page, half smiling at his imagination, half unsettled by the precision in his words. He drew sketches, creatures that shouldn't exist. Muscular, upright, half-human silhouettes, with elongated jaws and claws that looked like blades. He wrote about scent trails, vocal mimicry, about something he called the bleed, a point where our world and theirs overlap. I thought he'd finally lost his mind. Then I found the photograph. It was tucked between the pages, faded, edges curled, but clear enough to make my stomach tighten. My father stood in front of a cabin I didn't recognize, snow up to his knees, rifle slung over his shoulder. Behind him, by the tree, something else stood. Tall, lean, blurred, but not enough to mistake it for a trick of light. It was watching him. The fire popped, and I jumped. I don't scare easy, but there's something about seeing proof that bends your own memories. My father's last letter came a week before he vanished. It was short. "If they ever come for me, don't follow." No name, no return address, just that single line. I always thought they meant debt collectors or government men. Now I'm not so sure. Outside, the wind picked up, pressing against the cabin walls like something breathing slow and steady. I could smell the snow coming, sharp, metallic. I ran my fingers along the spine of the journal and turned another page. The tone of his writing shifted halfway through, colder, more desperate. He wasn't recording anymore. He was warning. "They learn," he wrote. "They test boundaries. They wait until you forget you're being watched." Then another note, written in the margin. "Fire keeps them cautious, but not for long." I leaned back, the chair creaking under my weight, trying to shake the chill that had settled between my shoulders. Every instinct said to stop reading. But curiosity is a kind of hunger. It grows sharper the longer you feed it. His words painted a picture of the Northern Territories, remote and untouched, where even the map's details fade into white space. He mentioned units, military or private, I couldn't tell, tasked with tracking these things. He called them Class 3 entities. He wrote that after an operation went wrong in '87, his team was ordered to erase all evidence and neutralize local witnesses. I shut the book, pulse hammering. My father, the man who taught me how to fish, how to tie knots, had written that sentence like a soldier following orders. What the hell had he been part of? The clock ticked loudly in the silence. 2:43 a.m. I told myself to go to bed, but my hand wouldn't let go of the journal. I flipped to the last entry. The ink was smeared, rushed, as if written in motion. They found the camp. Moving fast. Not alone anymore. If anyone finds this, tell my son. The line ended in a slash. The next page was blank. A gust of wind rattled the window pane. I looked up, half expecting to see something outside. Just black trees. My reflection stared back, drawn, tired, eyes rimmed red from staring too long. That's when I heard it. A sound low and deliberate. Not the usual creak of old wood, not the shifting of ice. This was outside, just beyond the porch. Slow, heavy. I froze, listening. The fire crackled faintly, shadows shifting across the walls. The sound came again, closer now. A dragging step, then a pause, like something testing the air. I set the journal down and reached for my father's rifle. The cold metal bit against my palm. The chamber was loaded. He always kept it that way. I moved quietly toward the window and peeled the curtain back just enough to see out. The night was white with frost, the moon slicing through the trees. Nothing moved. Still, the air felt charged, the kind of stillness you get before lightning hits. I waited. A minute. 2. Then I caught it, just at the edge of the tree-line. A shape. Upright. Still. Watching. The same height, the same broad outline I'd seen in that photograph. My heart kicked against my ribs, breath fogging the glass. It didn't move toward the house. It didn't move at all. It just stood there. The fire guttered low, throwing long shadows behind me. My father's voice echoed in my head, words he'd said years ago on a hunting trip when I was 10. If you ever feel something watching, don't look away first. It teaches them who's prey. I stared until my eyes watered. When I finally blinked, the figure was gone. The silence that followed wasn't relief. It was heavier, like the forest itself was holding its breath. I let the curtain fall, stepped back, and tried to calm my shaking hands. My fingers brushed against the journal again, and I noticed something I hadn't before. A folded piece of paper tucked into the back cover. I unfolded it slowly. It was a map. Northern Montana, near Glacier. A hand-drawn circle around a remote area labeled Camp Leviathan. Beside it, written in the same rough scrawl, if they ever find me, this is where it ends. I don't know why, but a part of me smiled. Maybe it was relief to finally have direction, or maybe madness runs in bloodlines. I poured the last of the coffee, bitter and cold, and stared at the map until my eyes blurred. Somewhere out there was the truth my father had died chasing. A board creaked on the porch. This time, unmistakable. A slow, deliberate step. I left for Montana 2 days after the journal incident. The cabin felt too small after that night. Every creak made me jump. Every gust of wind sounded like breath on glass. I packed what I could fit into my truck: rifle, tent, freeze-dried food, the journals, and my father's compass. The road north wound through endless pines and frostbitten valleys, the kind of terrain that eats sound. I told myself I was chasing answers, but part of me knew I was following a ghost. The mountains rose like dark teeth against the horizon. Snow lingered in the shadows of spruce and cedar, and the rivers ran slow and black under sheets of ice. My father had hunted here for decades, though the word hunt felt wrong now. His notes mentioned coordinates near the edge of Glacier National Park, remote country, the kind you only reach by faith and a full tank of gas. By dusk, I pulled into a small town that looked half abandoned. A few scattered houses, a boarded-up post office, and a gas station that still used mechanical pumps. The clerk behind the counter was a thin man with a weathered face and a permanent squint. When I mentioned my father's name, his eyes flicked up sharp. "You his boy?" he asked. "Yeah," I said carefully. "You knew him?" "Everyone did," he murmured, glancing toward the window. "You're heading up past Black Elk Ridge, aren't you?" I nodded. He rubbed his chin. "Ain't much up there now. You should turn back before nightfall. Storm coming in." I told him I'd be fine. He just shook his head, slid my change across the counter, and muttered something under his breath that sounded like a prayer. The road out of town narrowed until it was nothing more than two tire tracks cutting through frozen earth. The headlights caught snow swirling across the path, like the air itself was hiding something. Every few miles, I'd spot a sign riddled with bullet holes. Warnings about trespassing, bears, private land. The usual. But there was another kind too. Hand-carved symbols nailed to trees. Circles with slashes through them. My father had drawn the same symbols in his journals. He'd called the markers. When the sun dipped behind a ridge, I pulled off near a clearing that matched one of the coordinates. I set up camp beside a frozen stream, the silence pressing close around me. No birds. No wind. Just the faint crackle of ice shifting under its own weight. I lit a small fire, the orange glow painting the trees in gold and shadow. As the flames rose, I pulled out one of the journals. The entry for this area was dated 1991. Activity confirmed near creek bed. Multiple carcasses. Avoid direct confrontation. Movement between 0200 and 0400 hours. The handwriting wavered, as if written in haste. I tried to laugh it off, but something in the air didn't let me. It smelled wrong, like rust and wet fur. I told myself it was just decay, an old kill site maybe. I grabbed my flashlight and decided to check the perimeter before turning in. I found the first carcass 50 yards from camp. A deer, what was left of one. Its rib cage was split open. Bones stripped clean, but hung from a branch 7 feet high. No bear does that. I scanned the tree, my breath coming out in white clouds. A second carcass hung nearby, smaller, maybe a fox. The snow beneath it was churned up, and claw marks slashed across the bark. I shined the light higher. The gouges were 12 feet off the ground. Something large moved then, a flash of motion between the trees. Too quick for detail, but the sound it made wasn't any animal I knew. A kind of low vibration that traveled through the air like pressure. I called out, "Who's there?" Nothing. The woods swallowed the words whole. I backed toward camp slowly, keeping the beam steady. When I reached the fire, it was nearly out. I fed it more wood and crouched beside it, heart pounding, listening for another sound. For 10 minutes, there was nothing. Then, faintly, a howl rose from somewhere beyond the ridge. Not wolf. Not coyote. It started low, built to a pitch that made the hair on my arm stand up, and then broke off mid-breath. I'd hunted all my life. I knew what every predator in the Rockies sounded like. This wasn't one of them. I barely slept. Every few minutes, I'd wake to the sound of branches snapping or the fire hissing in the cold. Around 3, the woods went silent again. That kind of silence you can feel in your chest. I thought I was alone until I heard the crunch of snow. Slow, heavy steps circling the tent. At first, I told myself it was wind pushing through ice, or maybe a moose wandering close. But the steps were deliberate. They paused, then moved again. I held my breath, counting them. 4, 5, 6. They stopped right beside me. Something brushed against the canvas. A sound like a hand dragging across the fabric. My pulse roared in my ears. I reached for the rifle, but my fingers trembled too hard to load it quietly. The footsteps started again, slower this time, almost curious. I could hear breathing, now deep, rhythmic, wet. Then, from outside, came a voice. It was soft, familiar. "Son." My blood turned to ice. It sounded like my father. He'd been dead for years. I sat frozen, rifle halfway up, trying to convince myself I'd misheard. But then the voice came again, closer to the ground this time, whispering through the cold. "Come on out, son. It's safe now." Something scraped against the tent pole. I stayed still, every muscle screaming. My father's voice again, but wrong now, slower, dragged out, like someone learning how to form words. "Come out." I closed my eyes, focused on breathing, trying to remember what he'd written. In the margin of one page, they mimic voices. Never answer. The fire outside hissed. I smelled smoke and something else beneath it, rot, wet fur, and blood. The steps shifted toward the entrance. The zipper moved half an inch on its own. I couldn't help it. I looked. Through the thin slit, the world outside glowed silver with moonlight. The fire was nearly gone. And there, just beyond the light's edge, stood something tall, its outline jagged, its breath clouding the air in slow bursts. It faced the tent directly, motionless. I leaned closer, squinting, heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my teeth. Then it opened its eyes. Two orbs, glowing amber, wide apart, too wide for any man. They didn't blink. I shut the zipper fast, backed away, and gripped the rifle, so hard my knuckles went numb. The breathing outside deepened, almost amused. And then silence. I waited what felt like hours before I dared move again. The fire had died, the cold creeping in. My fingers brushed the journal near my bedroll. I thought of my father's final note, the one I'd ignored. If they ever come for me, don't follow. But I had. And whatever had found him was standing outside my tent.